When my daughter told me I had 24 hours to pack my belongings and get out of my own home, I just smiled at her. 3 days later, I was sitting across from her in court as her face turned ghostly white when the judge read my late husband's real will. That's when I realized life is like a chess game. Sometimes you have to sacrifice your queen to protect your king. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from in the comments. Because trust me, this story twists more than a hurricane wind, and you'll want to stick around for what happens next. My name is Clara, and for 32 years, I believed I had built an unshakable home with my husband Robert and our daughter Maria. Our Mediterranean-style house on Oakwood Drive was my sanctuary, the garden I'd nurtured, the kitchen where I'd prepared countless family meals, the living room where we'd celebrated every Christmas since Maria was born. It was a Tuesday morning when everything fell apart. The sky outside matched my mood, gray and threatening. I was arranging fresh flowers in the entryway when Maria stormed in, her husband Blake trailing behind her like a reluctant shadow. "We need to talk," she said, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. She didn't even kiss my cheek like she normally would. The three of us sat at the dining table where we'd shared so many happy meals. Now it felt like an interrogation room. "Dad's been gone for 4 months, Maria started, her fingers drumming against the polished wood. "Blake and I have discussed it, and we've decided it's time you moved on." "Moved on?" I repeated, confused. "Moved out," Blake clarified, not quite meeting my eyes. Maria slid a folder across the table. "These are some nice assisted living facilities. We've already toured them. The Pines has an opening next week." I stared at her, this stranger wearing my daughter's face. "This is my home, Maria. Your father and I bought it together before you were even born." "Actually," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "the house was always in Dad's name. And as his sole heir, it's mine now. Script part separator, The shock hit me like a physical blow. I felt my chest tighten as if someone had wrapped steel bands around it. "That's not possible," I whispered. "Robert would never." "It's all legal," Blake interrupted, finally finding his courage. He tapped the document they'd brought. "We've had it verified by 2 attorneys." Maria's face softened for just a moment, the first crack in her cold demeanor. "Mom, you'll be better off somewhere with care available. You're getting older, and this house is too much for you to manage alone." I almost laughed. At 58, I was hardly decrepit. I still jogged 3 miles every morning and volunteered at the library twice a week. "I'm giving you until tomorrow evening," Maria continued. "We've already arranged for movers to come Thursday morning." That's when something strange happened inside me. Instead of the tears they clearly expected, I felt a sudden calm wash over me. The corner of my mouth turned up slightly. "Why are you smiling?" Maria demanded, clearly unnerved. "No reason, sweetheart," I replied, rising from the table. "I'll start packing." They exchanged confused glances as I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of Robert's expensive scotch, something I never drank. That night, after they left, I went to my bedroom closet and pulled out the hidden safe behind my winter coats. Robert had installed it years ago, telling Maria it was just for jewelry. Inside was exactly what I needed, the real will, the one Robert had shown me the week before his heart attack, along with a letter explaining everything. You see, my husband knew our daughter better than she realized. He'd watched how Blake had slowly influenced her, isolating her from us, encouraging her growing materialism. Robert had prepared for exactly this scenario. The next morning, I called João Garcia, Robert's oldest friend and attorney. Not the family lawyer Maria consulted, the personal one Robert had trusted with his most delicate matters. "They've given me 24 hours, I told him. "Perfect," João replied. "That's all we need." Script part separator, When Maria returned the next day with Blake and their smug attorney, I was sitting calmly in the living room, 2 suitcases by the door. "You're being very reasonable about this," Blake said, unable to hide his surprise. "Life is full of unexpected turns," I replied, sipping my tea. "Sometimes you just have to accept them." Maria looked around suspiciously. "What are you planning, Mom?" "Planning. I'm just doing what my daughter asked." I smiled again, that same small smile that had unsettled her yesterday. Their attorney, a pinch-faced man named Trent, handed me some papers. This is just a formal acknowledgement that you're vacating the property voluntarily. I set them aside without looking. I'll have my own attorney review these. You have an attorney? Maria scoffed. Everyone should have one, dear. Your father taught me that. As I walked out the door of my home of 3 decades, Maria called after me. Mom, where will you go? I turned back, meeting her eyes. Don't worry about me, Maria. I always land on my feet. I spent that night in Joao's guest room, going through Robert's documents. What I discovered made my blood run cold. It wasn't just about the house. Robert had uncovered something terrible about Blake, something that explained why he'd been so eager to get his hands on our assets. The next morning, Joao and I filed our petition with the court. By afternoon, Maria was served papers demanding her appearance before a judge the following day. That evening, my phone exploded with text messages from Maria. What the hell is this? Emergency hearing? Are you serious? Mom, what are you doing? Call me right now. I left them all unanswered. When I walked into the courthouse the next morning, Maria was already there with Blake and Trent. The color drained from her face when she saw Joao beside me. Uncle João, she whispered. She'd always called him that, though we weren't related by blood. Hello, Maria, he replied formally. Judge Harriet Coleman was not a woman who tolerated nonsense. She peered at us over her reading glasses as we all took our seats. I understand we have an unusual probate dispute, she said. Let's begin. Script part separator, Trent stood first, all slick confidence and polished shoes. Your Honor, this is a simple matter. Robert Mitchells will clearly names his daughter Maria as sole heir to all his assets, including the family home. Mrs. Mitchell has been served notice to vacate, which she initially agreed to, but now appears to be contesting. João Rosislovli, his viatered faces Sirius. Your Honor, we're here because there are 2 wills. The one Mr. Trent references was superseded 3 months before Robert Mitchell's death. He handed documents to the clerk, who passed them to the judge. Maria's mouth fell open. That's impossible, Blake blurted. We would have known. Mr. Mitchell took great pains to ensure you didn't, Joao replied evenly. The judge reviewed the papers, her expression unchanging. This appears to be properly executed. Can you explain the circumstances, Mr. Garcia? Robert Mitchell became concerned about undue influence on his daughter. He discovered his son-in-law had accumulated gambling debts exceeding $350,000 and was pressuring Maria to access family funds. Blake's face reddened. That's a lie. Silence, Judge Coleman snapped. She turned to Maria. Did you know about these alleged debts? Maria's confidence wavered. Blake mentioned some financial difficulties, but nothing like that amount. I watched my daughter's world crumbling around her as Joao produced bank statements showing large transfers from Maria's accounts to offshore entities. Furthermore, Joao continued, Robert learned Mr. Davis had previously been involved in 2 other marriages where he targeted women from wealthy families, extracted significant assets, then disappeared. The courtroom fell silent. Maria turned to Blake, horror dawning on her face. Tell me this isn't true, she whispered. Blake wouldn't meet her eyes. Judge Coleman cleared her throat. The revised will stipulates that while Maria Mitchell remains an heir, the family home remains in Clara Mitchell's possession for her lifetime, after which it passes to charity if Maria hasn't fulfilled certain conditions. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Joao confirmed. Script part separator, The judge's eyes narrowed as she studied Blake, who was now fidgeting in his seat. Mr. Davis, these are serious allegations. I'm issuing a temporary restraining order preventing you from accessing any Mitchell family assets pending further investigation. Maria's shoulders slumped. She looked smaller somehow, deflated. Your Honor, Joao continued, there's more. The revised will contains what Robert called a redemption clause. If Maria separates from Mr. Davis within 1 year of Robert's death and undergoes financial counseling, she will inherit 40% of her father's estate immediately, with the remainder held in trust. I watched my daughter's face as the truth sank in. Her father hadn't disinherited her, he'd tried to protect her. This case is continued for 30 days, Judge Coleman announced. Mrs. Mitchell retains full possession of the family home. Ms. Mitchell and Mr. Davis are ordered to vacate the premises within 24 hours. As we left the courtroom, Maria caught my arm. Mom, Not now, I said quietly. You need time to think. 3 days later, Maria showed up at my doorstep alone, eyes red from crying. Blake's gone, she said. Disappeared with what was left in our joint account. You were right. Dad was right. I silently led her to the kitchen and poured 2 cups of coffee, just like old times. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she whispered. Maybe not yet, I replied honestly. But your father built a bridge back to this family for you. It's your choice whether to cross it. That evening, as we sat in the garden Robert had loved so much, Maria asked the question I'd been waiting for. Why did you smile when I told you to leave? You knew then, didn't you? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, for the first time in years. I smiled because in that moment, I saw your father's wisdom. He knew you'd have to lose everything to understand what matters. Script part separator ===. Maria slept in her old bedroom that night. I stood in the doorway watching her for a moment, remembering the little girl who'd once begged for one more bedtime story. The daughter I'd raised seemed a million miles from the cold woman who'd thrown me out of my own home just days before. The next morning, I was making breakfast when my phone rang. It was Joao. Clara, we have a problem, he said without preamble. Blake's attorney is contesting the will. I nearly dropped the spatula. On what grounds? They're claiming Robert wasn't of sound mind when he made the changes. And they found a witness, Robert's former nurse. My stomach knotted. Diane had cared for Robert during his final weeks. I'd thought she was devoted to him, to us. That's ridiculous. Robert was completely lucid until the end. I know that, and you know that, Joao said. But she signed an affidavit claiming he was confused and easily influenced. She's lying, I hissed. Why would she do this? There was a pause on the line. Money, probably. Blake must have gotten to her. Maria appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face pale. She'd heard everything. Mom, I'm so sorry, she whispered. This is all my fault. I ended the call with Joao and turned to my daughter. We're not beaten yet. What can I do? She asked. First, tell me everything you know about Blake's movements the last few months. Who he met with, where he went, anyone unusual who contacted him. Maria sat at the counter, coffee growing cold between her hands. There was one man. Blake said he was a business associate, but they always met at odd hours. I think his name was Victor. I felt a chill. Victor Landon had been Robert's business partner 20 years ago, before their bitter falling out. Robert had caught him embezzling and forced him out of the company. Did you ever meet him? I asked carefully. Once. Older man, maybe Dad's age. Silver hair, always wore expensive suits. He gave me the creeps. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo from Robert's company archives. That's him, Maria confirmed, eyes widening. Why? Who is he? Someone who hated your father. And apparently, he's not done with our family yet. Script part separator ===. I needed to understand why Victor Landon had resurfaced now, after all these years. What was his connection to Blake, and how had they orchestrated this plan together? The next morning, I drove to the assisted living facility where Diane now worked. I found her in the staff lounge, her face draining of color when she saw me. Clara, she stammered. I didn't expect to see me again. I finished for her. I imagine not, after what you've done. She glanced around nervously. I don't know what you mean. I placed my phone on the table between us, recording app running. Let's talk about the affidavit you signed claiming my husband was mentally incompetent. I can't discuss that, she whispered. Can't. Or won't. How much did they pay you, Diane? Her hands trembled as she reached for her coffee. You don't understand. They threatened me. Who threatened you? Blake or Victor Landon? Her head snapped up. How do you know about Victor? So it was him, I said, feeling a cold satisfaction. What did he want? Tears welled in her eyes. He showed up at my apartment one night. Said he knew where my kids went to school. That if I didn't sign the papers, he'd. She couldn't finish. I need you to tell the truth, Diane. Robert deserves that much. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I said honestly. But I'm more afraid of letting these men destroy my family. After an hour, I left with Diane's promise to recant her statement and a recorded conversation detailing Victor's threats. It wasn't enough to solve all our problems, but it was a start. When I returned home, I found Maria sitting at Robert's desk, surrounded by stacks of files. Mom, she said, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. I think I know what Victor's really after. Script part separator, She spread several documents across the desk. Dad was developing some kind of new security technology before he died. These are patent applications. I skimmed the technical language. What am I looking at? Dad called it Fortress. It's an encryption algorithm that could revolutionize digital banking security. He was weeks away from filing the final patents. Understanding dawned slowly. If Robert died before the patents were finalized, and the intellectual property passed to Maria, and Blake convinced you to sign over rights, I murmured. Maria nodded miserably. Last month, I signed something Blake said was just routine paperwork for Dad's estate. I didn't even read it carefully. João arrived an hour later, his face grave as he reviewed the documents. This is worse than I thought, he said. According to these transfers, Blake assigned the patent rights to a shell company. I'd bet anything Victor Landon controls it. Can we stop it? I asked. Possibly. The transfers might be invalid if we can prove coercion or misrepresentation. But we need evidence of Blake and Victor's conspiracy. I thought of Robert's home office. The day before his heart attack, he'd been unusually secretive, working late into the night. I need to check something, I told them. In Robert's office, I ran my hands along the underside of his desk, our old hiding place for anniversary gifts. My fingers found a small irregularity, a tiny compartment I'd never noticed before. Inside was a USB drive with a single word written on it, insurance. My hands shook as I plugged it into Robert's computer. The drive contained dozens of audio files, recordings of conversations between Blake and Victor going back 18 months. Maria, come listen to this, I called. As the recording played, we heard Blake's voice clearly. She doesn't suspect anything. Once the old man kicks it, Maria gets everything, and she'll sign whatever I put in front of her. Victor's cold laugh followed. Just make sure she does it within 90 days. That's our window before the patent office starts asking questions. Maria's face crumpled. I'd never seen such raw pain in my daughter's eyes. Script part separator, Maria collapsed into the desk chair, her whole body shaking. I loved him, she whispered. I actually loved him, Mom. I placed my hand on her shoulder. I know you did, sweetheart. How could I have been so blind? The anguish in her voice broke my heart all over again. Because Blake was good at what he did, I told her. And because Victor knew exactly how to exploit your relationship with your father. João was already making calls, his voice urgent as he spoke to his associates. We need to move quickly. File for an emergency injunction on those patent transfers. And get me everything you can find on Victor Landon's current business holdings. We spent the next 3 days building our case. The more we uncovered, the clearer the picture became. Victor hadn't just wanted revenge against Robert. He needed the Fortress technology to save his failing cybersecurity company. Without it, he faced bankruptcy within months. On Thursday morning, my phone rang with an unknown number. Hello, Clara. Victor's voice was exactly as I remembered it, smooth as silk with something venomous underneath. I think it's time we talked. I have nothing to say to you. Oh, I think you do. Unless you want Maria to face criminal charges for conspiracy to commit fraud. Blake left quite a paper trail with her signature all over it. My blood ran cold. You wouldn't. I would. Meet me at the Westlake Hotel, room 712, at noon. Come alone, or the FBI gets an anonymous tip about your daughter's involvement in Blake's scheme. I hung up, my mind racing. This was both a threat and an opportunity. Was that him? Maria asked, her face pale. I nodded slowly. He wants to meet. You can't go alone, João protested when I told him. It's too dangerous. If I don't, he'll implicate Maria. I turned to my daughter. How good are you with technology these days? Script part separator equals. Good enough, she replied, straightening her shoulders. What do you need? Within an hour, Maria had set up my phone to secretly record and installed a tracking app that would broadcast my location to her and Joao. We worked out a simple code system. If I texted the word memories, they would call the police immediately. The Westlake Hotel was one of the city's oldest luxury establishments. As I rode the elevator to the 7th floor, I touched the inside pocket of my jacket, feeling the outline of Robert's USB drive, my insurance policy. Victor opened the door before I could knock. He'd aged since I'd last seen him, but his eyes still held that same calculating coldness. Clara, he smiled, gesturing me inside. Still elegant after all these years. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said, remaining standing. What do you want? Direct as ever. He poured himself a drink without offering me one. I want you to drop this ridiculous court challenge and convince Maria to honor the agreement she signed. You mean the ones Blake tricked her into signing? After you conspired with him to steal Robert's work? Victor's smile tightened. That's a creative interpretation. I prefer to think of it as correcting a historical injustice. Robert stole my ideas 20 years ago. We both know that's a lie. He shrugged. Truth is subjective. What matters is what I can prove. He pulled out a folder. Like these bank transfers from Maria to offshore accounts. Very suspicious activity. Script part separator equals. Those were Blake's gambling debts, I said. Maria knew nothing about them. Victor laughed. The money came from her accounts. Her signature authorized the transfers. The DA won't care about her excuses. I took a deep breath, thinking of the hidden recorder on my phone. So that's your offer? I drop everything, or Maria goes to prison. Not quite, Victor replied, swirling his whiskey. I'm also prepared to pay you, generously. $5 million. Enough for you to start over somewhere pleasant. Florida, perhaps. I hear retirement communities there are lovely. My late husband's technology is worth billions, I said flatly. Victor's eyes narrowed. Don't overplay your hand, Clara. You're not in a position to negotiate. I reached into my jacket and placed Robert's USB drive on the table. Actually, I think I am. What's this supposed to be? Insurance, I said, using Robert's word. Every conversation between you and Blake for the past 18 months. Including the one where you specifically discussed defrauding Maria and stealing the fortress patents. The color drained from Victor's face. That's impossible. Blake assured me. Blake wasn't as clever as he thought. Neither are you. Victor lunged for the drive, but I snatched it back. Too late. Copies are already with my attorney, in a safe deposit box, and on a secured server. You're bluffing, he hissed, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Would you like me to play one of the recordings? I pulled out my phone. Here's my favorite part, where you discuss how to manipulate my daughter after her father's death. How to, quote, use her daddy issues to your advantage. You bitch, Victor snarled, his composure finally cracking. I smiled, channeling Robert's quiet confidence. No, Victor. I'm simply my husband's wife. Did you really think he wouldn't protect us from you? Script part separator equals. Victor's face contorted with rage. He took a menacing step toward me, and for a moment, I felt a flash of fear. But I stood my ground, my finger hovering over the emergency text I'd prepared. You've got nothing, he spat. Those recordings won't be admissible. I'll claim they're doctored. Maybe, I conceded. But combined with Diane's new testimony about how you threatened her family, Blake's financial records, and the patent office's documentation, it's more than enough to destroy you. He lunged forward, grabbing my wrist hard enough to bruise. Give me that drive. Let go of me, I said calmly, or I press send, and hotel security will be here in 30 seconds. He released me, breathing heavily. What do you want? Everything Blake transferred goes back to Maria. You sign a complete confession about your conspiracy.
And you disappear from our lives forever.
You're insane, he scoffed.
E derrater take mais chances em corte. E val que to the door.
Your choice. The DA's office opens at 9 tomorrow.
I'll be there fast fin.
Wait, Victor called, desperation creeping into his voice. I need that technology. My company will collapse without it. I turned back. You should have thought of that before targeting my family. What if, he hesitated, calculating. What if I offered you a partnership? 30% of all profits from the fortress system. That's easily worth 50 million over 5 years.
E almost laughed.
Do you really think this is about money? What else is there? He asked, genuinely confused. Justice, I said simply. For Robert. For Maria. For every family you've tried to destroy. Victor's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. For the first time, I saw him clearly, not as the powerful villain who'd haunted our lives, but as a desperate old man clinging to his last chance. I'll have my attorney draw up the paperwork, I said. You'll sign everything tomorrow at his office.
Tenha.
As I closed the door behind me, I felt lighter than I had in months. Robert had given us the tools we needed, but facing Victor, that victory was mine. Script part separator, ===. Back at home, Maria was pacing anxiously by the window. Mom. She rushed toward me. What happened?
You are gone so long.
I sank into Robert's favorite armchair, suddenly exhausted. It's over. Victor agreed to our terms. João looked skeptical.
Just like that.
He surrendered. Not willingly, I admitted, showing them my bruised wrist. But when faced with prison or cooperation, even Victor Landon can be practical. Maria knelt beside me, gently examining my arm.
He hurt you.
We should press charges. No, I said firmly. What matters is getting back what's yours, what your father created. If we involve the police now, everything gets tied up in court for years.
Your mother's right, João said. Let's secure the paperwork fast.
Then we can decide about criminal charges. The next morning, we arrived at João's office 15 minutes early. I'd barely slept, half expecting Victor to flee town overnight. At 10:05, the receptionist announced his arrival. Victor looked like he'd aged another decade since yesterday. His designer suit was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. You're late, I said coldly. Traffic, he muttered, not meeting my gaze. João spread the documents across the conference table. Everything we discussed.
Full confession of your conspiracy with Blake Davis.
Complete reversal of all patent transfers. A binding non-disclosure agreement preventing you from discussing fortress technology with anyone. Victor scanned the papers, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for the pen. One more thing, I added. A written apology to Maria. That wasn't part of our deal, he snapped. I'm amending it. Our eyes locked in a final battle of wills. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. As Victor signed each document, I felt Robert's presence beside me. This victory belonged to both of us. After Victor left, João carefully gathered the signed documents. We've got him, he said with quiet satisfaction. Everything's legally binding. Maria stood by the window, watching Victor's car pull away. Will it really be over now? For us, yes, I assured her. For Victor, the fallout is just beginning. Once his investors learn he doesn't have rights to Fortress, his company will collapse. On the drive home, Maria was unusually quiet. It wasn't until we were sitting in the garden that she finally spoke. I don't deserve any of this, Mom. After what I did to you, I should have trusted you and Dad. I took her hand. Your father knew you'd make mistakes. That's why he created a path back for you. But how can you forgive me so easily? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Who said it was easy? I replied honestly.
I'm still hurt, Maria.
Trust takes time to rebuild. But you're my daughter, and I never stopped loving you. That night, I stood in Robert's office, running my fingers over his desk. You were right, I whispered to the empty room. About everything. 6 months later, Maria and I stood in the cemetery, placing flowers on Robert's grave. The fortress patents had been officially registered in her name, and she'd established a foundation to manage the technology's implementation. Dad would be proud of you, I told her. Of us, she corrected, linking her arm through mine. I couldn't have done any of this without you. As we walked back to the car, I thought about the journey we'd traveled. From betrayal to reconciliation, from loss to renewal.
Life will always surprise you, my mother used to say.
It's how you respond to those surprises that defines you. When my daughter told me to leave my home, I smiled because somehow, deep down, I knew it wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would ultimately bring us closer than ever before. Sometimes, the greatest victories come disguised as devastating defeats. And sometimes, what seems like the end is actually the door to something better than you ever imagined.
Robert knew that.
Now Maria and I did too. In the end, I learned that family, real family, isn't defined by houses or wills or money. It's defined by forgiveness, by standing together when the world tries to tear you apart. The smile I wore when Maria told me to leave wasn't about knowing I'd win.